Ricciardo versus Verstappen. This wasn't a crash, it was a declaration of war. For Red Bull, Baku 2018 wasn't supposed to be a showdown, but from lap 1 it became clear. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo weren't racing the field, they were racing each other, and Red Bull let it happen. It started early, Verstappen got the better launch, Ricciardo slipped behind, but Ricciardo was faster, and he knew it. What followed wasn't teammate racing, it was two alpha drivers locked in open combat. Every corner, every straight, Verstappen blocked Ricciardo multiple times down the main straight, not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Verstappen moved under braking, an aggressive tactic FIA had previously scrutinized. Ricciardo questioned it on the radio. Red Bull said nothing. Lap after lap, the tension grew. Ricciardo finally made a move stick on lap 27, diving down the inside into turn 1. The kind of move only Ricciardo could pull off, but Verstappen wasn't finished. 2 corners later, Verstappen pulled the cutback. He retook the place, forcing Ricciardo wide at the exit. The gloves were off, the pit wall, helpless. Horner and Marco refused to issue team orders. They believed in letting them race. Behind the scenes, Ricciardo's camp knew the truth. Red Bull saw Verstappen as the future. Ricciardo, the 7-time winner, felt like the outsider in his own team, and it showed on track. By lap 40, everything came to a head. Ricciardo had the pace advantage, newer tires, DRS full deployment. Down the kilometer-long Baku straight, Ricciardo lined up Verstappen once again. This time it was for keeps. At over 330 kilometers per hour, Verstappen drifted left to block. Ricciardo adjusted, then Verstappen darted right. Ricciardo, traveling faster, was boxed in. He had nowhere to go. And then the inevitable. At full throttle, Ricciardo's front wing slammed under Verstappen's rear. Both cars exploded into carbon fiber. Both Red Bulls smashed into the barriers. Double DNF. Red Bull's garage stood silent. Mechanics stared at the monitors. Christian Horner whispered, "That's unacceptable." But Helmut Marko, expressionless. Ricciardo climbed out first, fists clenched. Verstappen followed. The body language said it all. Ricciardo was furious. In the post-race debrief, Verstappen defended himself. "We're both to blame." Ricciardo stayed quiet, but inside, he felt betrayed. He knew the team would protect Verstappen. Publicly, Red Bull said both drivers were equally responsible. Privately, Ricciardo's fate was sealed. Baku wasn't just a crash. It was the moment Ricciardo realized Red Bull was no longer his team. 3 months later, he announced his shock move to Renault. Baku didn't just end a race. It ended Daniel Ricciardo's Red Bull career. Hamilton versus Rosberg, 2016. When the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix began, Mercedes weren't just leading the championship. They were dominating Formula 1. But beneath the silver paint, the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry was boiling. Nico Rosberg arrived in Barcelona after 4 consecutive wins. He led the title race comfortably. Lewis Hamilton, the defending champion, was under pressure. And behind the smiles in pre-race interviews, both men knew this weekend wasn't just about victory. It was about control. From the start lights, Rosberg launched perfectly from second place, immediately moving ahead of pole sitter Hamilton. But just seconds later, the first trigger point emerged. Rosberg, switching modes after turn 3, mistakenly left his car in the wrong energy recovery setting. Hamilton spotted it. Exiting turn 3, Rosberg's car slowed slightly due to lack of hybrid deployment. Hamilton, behind, knew this was his only chance. He gained over 20 kilometers per hour of closing speed. And then the moment came. Hamilton committed to the overtake down the long straight toward turn 4. Rosberg, aware of his compromised engine mode, reacted aggressively. He moved once to defend the inside line. Hamilton, undeterred, dived for the gap. Then Rosberg made the crucial second move, tightening his defensive block further, right as Hamilton was fully committed. At 290 kilometers per hour, Hamilton's front left tire hit the grass. On full throttle with no grip, Hamilton's car spun violently sideways, re-entering the track uncontrollably. Rosberg, still mid-corner, could only watch as Hamilton's car slammed into his side pod. Both Mercedes cars spun out together. They ended up in the gravel trap. 30 seconds after the lights went out, the team with the fastest cars in the world was out of the race. Double DNF. Toto Wolff threw his headset across the pit wall. Niki Lauda stormed away from the cameras. The live radio between Hamilton and his race engineer captured the shock. "I got torpedoed." In the immediate aftermath, both drivers blamed each other. Hamilton argued Rosberg moved twice, a clear breach of defensive rules. Rosberg claimed he was entitled to close the door, and Hamilton forced the issue. The stewards ruled it a racing incident, but inside Mercedes, it was a catastrophe. Wolff called an emergency debrief the next morning. Engineers, strategists, and both drivers sat in silence as the footage replayed. There was no punishment, but the message was clear: never again. Yet the damage was irreversible. From that race onwards, Nico Rosberg stopped cooperating with Hamilton entirely. No more data sharing, no more debriefs, no more pre-race handshake. The civil war, simmering since 2014, exploded that day in Barcelona. It wasn't just a crash, it was the exact moment Rosberg declared he'd rather collide than concede. And Hamilton, he learned that his teammate wasn't playing by gentlemen's rules anymore. Mercedes went on to win both championships that year, but their trust, their unity, their partnership, it was totaled that morning in Spain. Vettel versus Leclerc. Ferrari's 2019 season had already turned into a civil war long before they reached Interlagos. Sebastian Vettel, the four-time world champion, was supposed to be the team leader. Charles Leclerc, the rising prodigy, wasn't supposed to challenge him so soon, but by Brazil, he wasn't just challenging him, he was beating him. Leclerc had outqualified Vettel 7 consecutive races. He'd taken more pole positions that year, and behind the scenes, Vettel felt the pressure. The engineers were shifting towards Leclerc. The fan base was too. Vettel knew it. So when they lined up at the 2019 Brazilian Grand Prix, it wasn't two teammates racing. It was two enemies in the same uniform. The race itself was chaos. Safety cars, overtakes, strategy gambles. Both Ferraris were running solidly in the top 5, but not fighting for the win. Still, for Vettel and Leclerc, position mattered more than points. On lap 66, the inevitable happened. Leclerc had fresher tires. He lunged past Vettel into turn 1 with a clean, clinical move. No contact, no aggression, just pure racecraft. He thought the battle was over. It wasn't. Vettel switched into attack mode immediately. Down the Reta Oposta straight, he deployed full battery power. He lined up Leclerc, moved to the outside, and passed. But then, right before the braking zone, Vettel drifted left at full speed, right into Leclerc. They touched. The contact was minimal, but the damage? Catastrophic. Leclerc's right front suspension snapped. Vettel's rear tire blew out almost instantly. Both cars coasted to a stop. Double retirement. Ferrari's race ruined in seconds. Inside the garage, the silence was louder than the engines. Mechanics stared at the screen. Binotto looked like a man who'd lost control of his drivers, because he had. Over the team radio, Vettel's voice crackled through. What was he doing? He hit me. Leclerc, seething, fired back. He just came across on me. Neither accepted blame. The media pounced. Reporters demanded answers. Fans erupted. Who was at fault? Leclerc, who had left Vettel little space, or Vettel, who initiated the final move? Ferrari refused to assign blame publicly. Privately, there was fury. Both drivers were summoned for a private debrief immediately after the race. Binotto made it clear, if this happened again, there'd be consequences. But the damage was already done. Brazil 2019 wasn't just a collision. It was the moment Ferrari officially lost control of its team. Vettel realized he was no longer the undisputed leader. Leclerc realized Vettel would never let him take over quietly. And Ferrari realized something even worse. They didn't have two drivers working together. They had two drivers at war. Webber versus Vettel. This wasn't just a racing incident. This was the moment Red Bull's title challenge fractured from the inside. Going into the 2010 Turkish Grand Prix, Mark Webber led the championship. He'd won 2 of the last 3 races. Vettel, his younger teammate, was desperate to assert himself as Red Bull's number 1, but the tension wasn't public yet. In Istanbul, it boiled over. For most of the race, Webber led. Vettel stayed close behind, waiting for instructions or a strategy call that never came. Red Bull, trying to avoid internal chaos, told both drivers to hold position. Vettel refused. On lap 40, with both drivers running 1-2, Vettel closed in using fuel-saving techniques to boost speed on the straights. He darted to the inside of Webber on the back straight. Webber didn't block aggressively, but he also didn't yield. As Vettel pulled alongside, he drifted left. Subtle, but enough. Vettel's right rear made contact with Webber's front left at over 300 kilometers per hour. Vettel spun instantly. Car broken. Race over. Webber managed to continue with a damaged front wing, eventually finishing 3rd. But the race wasn't the story. The fallout was. Immediately after climbing from his wrecked car, Vettel made the now infamous crazy hand gesture, circling his finger at his head while pointing towards Webber, publicly blaming him. The Red Bull garage split in 2. Helmut Marko sided with Vettel. Christian Horner tried to play neutral, but behind the scenes, Webber felt abandoned. In interviews after the race, Webber didn't hide his frustration. "I'm not surprised," he said when asked about Vettel's move. "That's how it works here." That sentence confirmed it. Red Bull had a number 1 driver, and it wasn't Webber. For the rest of the 2010 season, the tension was unbearable. At Silverstone, Webber won after being given a second-hand front wing previously allocated to Vettel. When asked if the win felt special, Webber responded bluntly, "Not bad for a number 2 driver." Red Bull's internal rivalry didn't just shape their 2010 title fight, it redefined how the team treated its drivers for the next decade. And it all started in Turkey, when 2 teammates fighting for supremacy chose collision over compromise. Ocon versus Perez. Force India wasn't a front-running team in 2017, but thanks to Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez, they became one of the biggest stories of the season, for all the wrong reason. From race 1, it was clear. These two didn't like each other. Perez was the experienced driver, the proven podium scorer. Ocon was the rival rising star, fast, fearless, and not interested in playing the junior role. The result? A season-long civil war that turned Force India from a points machine into a demolition derby. It started quietly. In Canada, Ocon was faster on fresher tires. Team orders were issued, let him through to attack the car ahead. Perez refused. Ocon sat behind, visibly faster, but boxed in. The team lost a potential podium, but the real carnage came in Azerbaijan. On lap 20 of the Baku Grand Prix, both Force India drivers were running in the top 5. Then Ocon tried to move into turn 2. Perez didn't yield. Ocon's front wing clipped Perez's rear tire. Carbon fiber exploded across the track. Both cars were damaged. Perez lost a podium. Ocon lost a top 5 finish. The radio messages were brutal. Perez blamed Ocon. Ocon called Perez dangerous. The garage atmosphere collapsed, but it wasn't over. At Spa, in Belgium, the rivalry reached its peak. On the run to Lake Combs at over 300 kilometers per hour, Perez forced Ocon into the wall, not once, but twice. The first touch shredded Ocon's front wing. The second left black tire marks down the side of Ocon's car, inches from taking him out. That moment could have ended both their races, or worse. Force India team principal Otmar Schaffnauer was livid. After the race, the team had to act. From that point forward, Force India issued a ban. No more racing between Ocon and Perez. Team orders would be enforced. Any attempt to overtake without permission would result in disciplinary action. What had been F1's most underdog success story turned into a political nightmare. By the end of 2017, the damage was done. Ocon's reputation as a no-compromise fighter was sealed. Perez remained the team's senior figure, but his image took a hit. Force India lost points, credibility, and their identity because two drivers simply couldn't share a racetrack. Hamilton versus Rosberg, 2014. In Formula 1 history, few races redefined a rivalry like Bahrain, 2014. There were no crashes, no retirements, but this wasn't racing. This was psychological warfare at 320 kilometers per hour. Mercedes had the fastest car on the grid by miles, but inside the silver garage, their two drivers were locked in a silent war. Lewis Hamilton, the aggressive attacker, Nico Rosberg, the calculating strategist. From the very first lap, Bahrain wasn't about victory, it was about dominance. After the safety car restart, Hamilton led. Rosberg was told he had the pace advantage. He was on the faster soft tires. Team orders, none. Toto Wolff gave them one message: let them race. And so they did. For 12 consecutive laps, Hamilton and Rosberg fought harder than enemies. Rosberg launched multiple attacks down the main straight using DRS. He passed Hamilton 3 times into turn 1, but Hamilton, on harder tires, fought back every time. Into turn 4, turn 8, turn 11. He defended like his career depended on it. At 310 kilometers per hour, both cars touched wheels. Twice. The radio traffic was chaos. Rosberg screamed for more power. Hamilton, cool on the radio, focused only on defending. In the cockpit, both drivers were overriding engine modes, using settings beyond what was authorized, just to gain millisecond advantages. Neither cared about team management anymore. At the end of lap 50, Rosberg made his final attempt. Using DRS, he pulled alongside Hamilton into turn 1. He braked later. He went deeper. Hamilton, on worn tires, stayed alongside. In a moment of insane bravery, Hamilton forced Rosberg wide at exit, retook the lead, and shut the door into turn 4. The garage was silent. Niki Lauda, watching from the pit wall, said simply, "That was real racing." Rosberg's last chance was gone. Hamilton crossed the line first. Victory, his second win of the season. On the podium, Hamilton grinned. Rosberg clapped politely. In the press conference, Hamilton called it the best race of his career. Rosberg, visibly furious, responded, "It was the most unfair race I've ever done." Bahrain 2014 wasn't a battle for points. It was a declaration of intent. From that race onward, the Mercedes partnership was dead. Rosberg and Hamilton weren't teammates anymore. They were enemies. Grosjean versus Magnussen. Haas entered the 2019 British Grand Prix desperate for a result. Their VF19 was unpredictable, underperforming, and sliding down the championship table. But what happened at Silverstone wasn't bad luck. It was self-inflicted disaster. Both Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen qualified in the midfield. They had one simple instruction: avoid contact. Instead, they collided twice in a single lap. At the race start, Magnussen got a better launch. Grosjean boxed in, tried to squeeze up the inside at turn 5. A narrow left-hander where no sane teammate would attack. Magnussen drifted slightly left, expecting Grosjean to yield. Grosjean didn't. The front wing of Grosjean's car clipped Magnussen's left rear tire. Both cars sustained instant damage. Grosjean's front wing shattered. Magnussen's floor and suspension were compromised. But the embarrassment wasn't over yet. Limping back to the pits, Magnussen tried to rejoin the racing line. Grosjean, blinded by carbon fiber debris, misjudged the apex at turn 7 and hit Magnussen again on the same lap. By the time both cars reached the pit lane, Haas mechanics knew it was over. Both were retired cleared from the race. A double DNF. On lap 1, team boss Gunther Steiner was speechless on the pit wall, but post-race he wasn't silent. His now infamous quote summed it up: "I'm not laughing anymore." Behind closed doors, the situation was worse. Both drivers blamed each other. Grosjean insisted Magnussen had squeezed him. Magnussen said Grosjean should have backed off. Steiner had enough. From Silverstone onwards, Haas imposed strict team orders. No racing, no contact, no excuses. The Silverstone crash didn't just ruin their weekend, it shattered the relationship between two drivers who once called themselves friends. For many fans, it was the moment Haas stopped being an underdog success story and started being a Netflix meme. Hamilton versus Alonso. This wasn't a crash, it was pure, deliberate sabotage within the same garage. In 2007, McLaren thought they had built their dream team. Fernando Alonso, the reigning double world champion. Lewis Hamilton, the rookie phenom. Both fast, both hungry, both convinced they were the team leader. But by mid-season, that dream was dead. The Hungary Grand Prix exposed just how toxic their relationship had become. It happened during qualifying. In Q3, McLaren ran a system where each driver got priority on alternate races for track position. This weekend, it was Alonso's turn to get final run priority. But Hamilton, furious at Alonso's attitude in the garage, ignored the agreed plan. He refused to let Alonso pass in the pit exit. That delay ruined Alonso's prep lap. What happened next changed McLaren's season. During their final pit stops before the last flying lap, Alonso came in first for tires. Hamilton queued behind, but Alonso waited. Instead of leaving when his stop was done, he sat there. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. The pit crew, confused, gestured him forward. He didn't move. Alonso stayed stationary, blocking Hamilton, who was stuck behind him in the box. Finally, Alonso left, but by then, Hamilton had no time to complete his outlap and start his final flyer. Alonso took provisional pole. Hamilton was livid. His race engineer's radio message was simple: "We've been screwed." In the garage, Ron Dennis looked shell-shocked. Post-qualifying, the FIA investigated. They found Alonso guilty of unsporting behavior and demoted him 5 grid places. McLaren was barred from scoring constructors' points that race, but the damage was done. From that day forward, Alonso and Hamilton weren't teammates. They were enemies. Their feud wasn't about position on track anymore. It was about destroying each other's careers. Alonso left McLaren just months later. Hamilton stayed. But the Hungary 2007 pit sabotage remains one of F1's most brutal team fights. Because this wasn't about a crash or contact. It was about trust. And Alonso killed it. Bottas versus Massa. Williams wasn't supposed to make headlines for teammate collisions. In 2016, they had the most stable, professional lineup on the grid. Valtteri Bottas, calm, calculated, the team's future. Felipe Massa, the veteran, the team's mentor. On paper, they were perfect, but in Baku, that image cracked. From the moment the race started, Bottas and Massa fought each other harder than they fought their actual rivals. They ignored every subtle hint from the pit wall to hold position. Both believed they were Williams' #1. Then came lap 25. Both cars barreled down Baku's massive straight, the longest full throttle zone in F1 at the time. Bottas had the toe on Massa. Massa moved once to defend, as the rules allowed. Bottas kept coming. Then Massa drifted slightly again under braking, a dangerous double move at nearly 340 kilometers per hour. Bottas, refusing to back out, ran out of track space. He scraped the wall. Sparks flew from his front wing. Massa, completely unyielding, kept his line as if Bottas wasn't there. The radio went ballistic. Felipe, let Valtteri through. Let him through, please. Massa ignored it. Both cars lost positions. In the garage, Williams' management watched silently, but inside the strategy room, anger exploded. This wasn't a team battling for the championship. This was a midfield team sabotaging itself. Post-race, the debrief was ugly. Bottas, normally ice cold, confronted Massa directly. Massa's response: "I don't care." Publicly, Williams called it a misunderstanding, but behind closed doors, it was clear. Bottas had disobeyed orders. Massa had ignored instruction, and Williams had 2 drivers who no longer trusted each other. For the rest of the season, Williams issued team orders earlier in every race. The freedom was over. Baku wasn't just a midfield scrap. It was the moment Williams realized professionalism didn't stop 2 drivers from fighting like enemies. Sainz versus Kvyat. In 2017, Toro Rosso wasn't fighting for championships. They weren't even fighting for podiums. But that didn't stop Carlos Sainz and Daniil Kvyat from treating each other like sworn enemies. It all came to a head at the Chinese Grand Prix. Sainz and Kvyat were two drivers in trouble. Sainz knew Red Bull had no space for him, stuck behind Verstappen and Ricciardo. Kvyat, demoted from Red Bull back to Toro Rosso, was racing to save his F1 career. Neither wanted to play the wingman role, neither was willing to back down, and in Shanghai, both drove like it. At the start, the track was slippery. Mixed conditions made every move risky. Sainz, gambling on dry tires, charged aggressively through the pack. Then came turn 6. Kvyat held the inside line. Sainz, more desperate, dived late down the inside. Kvyat, unaware, turned in. Sainz clipped his teammate's rear wheel. Kvyat spun out, nearly collecting multiple cars as he rotated across the track. Radio messages exploded. Kvyat screamed, "What was he thinking?" Sainz calmly told his engineer, "I was there." He turned. The damage was done. Kvyat's car was compromised. He retired before the end of the race. Sainz carried on to finish in the points, but the garage atmosphere was destroyed. Behind the scenes, Toro Rosso bosses weren't happy. Helmut Marko watched from Red Bull, and for Kvyat, that was the final straw. He'd already been demoted once. Now, crashing with a junior teammate sealed his fate. By October that year, Kvyat was dropped from Toro Rosso entirely. That contact in Shanghai wasn't just a racing incident. It was the moment Daniil Kvyat's Red Bull career officially ended. And Carlos Sainz, he walked out of Toro Rosso too, loaned to Renault later that same year. Two drivers, one clash, both gone.